It was one of those numb, gray Thursday mornings where everything felt slow, the kind of day where even the school's flickering fluorescent lights seemed tired. I was a junior at Ridgewood High, your average suburban school where nothing worse than cafeteria fights or vape detectors going off ever happened. That week had been especially dull. I'd been zoning out in Mr. Keeler's pre-calc class, half listening to the hum of the HVAC system and the occasional snicker from the back row. My biggest worry was a chemistry quiz I hadn't studied for. Then, at 10:17 a.m., the lockdown alarm blared, 3 sharp, robotic beeps repeating like a death knell. At first, everyone froze, thinking it was a drill. But then the principal's voice crackled over the intercom, strained in a way I'd never heard before. "This is not a drill. Seek immediate shelter." The room erupted into chaos, chairs screeching, someone's water bottle hitting the floor. But Mr. Keeler moved fast, herding us toward the supply closet at the back of the room. It was cramped, smelling of old textbooks and disinfectant, with just enough space for all 22 of us to crouch in silence. Someone's elbow dug into my ribs, but no one complained. The only light came from the gap under the door, and I remember fixating on it, counting the seconds between each breath. Then we heard it. Heavy footsteps in the hall, too fast to be a teacher's. A man's voice, raw and jagged, shouted names. "Where's Principal Harper? Tell me where the cowards are hiding." My stomach dropped. He knew the layout. He knew names. Next came the sound of doorknobs rattling, one after another, each metallic jiggle louder as he got closer. The girl beside me muffled a sob into her sweater. The man's voice got closer, his words slurring like he was choking on rage. "You think you can ignore me? I know you're in here." A door slammed nearby, probably Mrs. Lowell's room, and someone in our closet gasped. Mr. Keeler shot them a warning look, his finger pressed to his lips. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my temples, my palms slick against the linoleum floor. Then a new sound, the creak of our own classroom door swinging open. The footsteps stopped. For a second, there was nothing but static silence, like the whole building was holding its breath. I could picture him standing there, scanning the empty desks, maybe noticing the half-open closet door. My muscles locked. Next to me, Jake Reyes had his eyes screwed shut, his lips moving in what might have been a prayer. Then click, the sound of our closet doorknob turning, just a fraction. My lungs burned. The guy didn't yank it open, just tested it, like he was savoring the hunt. I could hear his breathing, uneven and wet, right on the other side of the thin metal door. My brain short-circuited, flipping between stupid thoughts. Did I text my mom, "I love you," this morning? Why didn't I run when I had the chance? The knob jiggled again, harder this time, and someone's phone buzzed in their pocket, a deafening vibration in the silence. The man let out a guttural laugh. "Oh, you're smart. Real smart." His shadow blocked the light under the door as he leaned in. Then, a deafening bang from down the hall. A fire extinguisher? A gunshot? And the footsteps suddenly retreated, pounding away toward the noise. No one moved. No one even blinked. The intercom crackled again, but all I could hear was my own pulse screaming in my ears. Time turned syrupy after that. The distant shouts and bangs faded, but the dread didn't. Someone's phone lit up. A text from a friend in the science wing. He's in the East Hall. "Cops here, but not inside yet." The screen's glow made us all flinch, like it might summon him back. Mr. Keeler mouthed, "Silence," and shoved the phone into his own pocket. The air in the closet was thick with sweat and the sour tang of fear. I kept replaying the way the man had laughed, like this was a game to him, like he knew exactly how powerless we were. My legs cramped, but I didn't dare shift my weight. Then, faint but unmistakable, came the wail of sirens. Relief flickered for half a second before a new horror hit me. What if the cops make it worse? I'd seen enough news stories to know how these things could spiral. A fresh wave of panic erupted when the PA system suddenly blared. "This is the police. Evacuate to the south parking lot." The voice was robotic, repeated 3 times. No one moved. Was it a trick? A recording? The guy had known the school's layout too well. What if he'd hacked the system? Mr. Keeler hesitated, then cracked the closet door just enough to peer out. The classroom was still empty, but the hallway was chaos. Distant screams, the stomp of running feet. He turned back to us, face grim. "We go together, fast and quiet. If I say drop, you drop." We nodded, a jittery pack of rabbits about to bolt. My throat closed as he counted down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. At the second we stepped out of the closet, the reality of the situation hit me like a punch. The hallway was a nightmare. Backpacks abandoned mid-flight, a trail of overturned chairs, and the sharp, metallic smell of something I couldn't place. We moved in a tight huddle, Mr. Keeler leading the way, his head snapping left and right like a soldier in a war zone. Every creak of the floorboards made my stomach lurch. Then, from around the corner, we heard him. His voice was ragged now, screaming about justice and cowards, but it was getting closer. My body screamed at me to run, but Mr. Keeler held up a fist, forcing us to freeze. I could see the veins in his neck bulging. The man's shadow stretched long across the linoleum. Just feet away, that's when the fire alarm went off. A deafening, brain-rattling shriek, and the sprinklers kicked on, drenching us in icy water. The man roared in frustration, his words lost in the noise. Mr. Keeler didn't hesitate. Now, he hissed, and we bolted, slipping and sliding toward the exit sign at the end of the hall. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The doors burst open under the weight of our panic, and suddenly we were outside, gasping in the cold air, squinting against the sunlight like prisoners freed from a dungeon. Cops swarmed past us, rifles raised, shouting into radios. I collapsed onto the asphalt, my legs giving out. Someone was sobbing. Someone else was laughing hysterically. All I could think was, we made it. We actually made it. The next hour was a blur of police questions, frantic parents, and the eerie glow of news vans setting up outside the school. They told us the man, a dad, just a dad, had been tackled by security near the gym. No gun, just a crowbar and a list of names scribbled on a crumpled receipt. I kept replaying the way he'd said, "You're smart," like he was proud of us for hiding. The weirdest part? His son, the one he'd been screaming about, wasn't even in school that day. He'd stayed home sick. They sent us all home early, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. Like the building itself had shifted, its hallways now holding whispers where there used to be laughter. That night, I dreamed of doorknobs turning on their own. I woke up sweating, convinced I'd heard footsteps outside my bedroom. It took weeks before I could walk into a room without checking the locks first. The school held an assembly about healing and security upgrades, but no one mentioned the unlocked side door, or why it took the cops 14 minutes to get inside, or how easily one man's rage had turned a place we knew into a hunting ground. They just handed out pamphlets and called it a day. Sometimes, when I'm sitting in class now, I'll catch myself staring at the closet door, waiting for the knob to twitch. The weirdest part? I'm not even scared anymore, just angry, because the thing no one talks about is how ordinary it all was, how it could have been worse, how it is worse for other kids in other schools, and how we all just went back to normal, like that morning never happened. But I remember every second. I was a junior at Ridgewood High, the kind of kid who blended into the background, always buried in a book or half listening to my friend's drama. That morning, I remember the fluorescent lights humming like angry bees as I slumped at my desk in Mr. Dawson's chemistry class. The air smelled like bleach and burnt popcorn from the cafeteria downstairs. Everything was normal until the intercom crackled. No principal's voice, just a sharp, staticky breath before the secretary stammered. Lockdown. This is not a drill. A few kids snorted, thinking it was another prank like the time someone released 3 goats in the gym. But then I saw it. Through the narrow window of our classroom door, a flash of movement near the staff parking lot. A figure, motionless in the driver's seat of a rusted blue sedan. Even from that distance, I could make out the ski mask, blank black, wrong in the September heat, that a T first. We joked. Probably some idiot trying to scare the new English teacher, Tyler whispered, elbowing me. But the car didn't move. Not when the first cop cruiser rolled up, not when the vice principal's voice came back on the intercom, tight with force comm. The mask stayed, turned toward the school, unblinking. The clock above the whiteboard ticked louder with every minute. An hour in, the giggles died. Someone's phone buzzed, a text from a friend in the East Wing. Dude, he's just sitting there, like he's waiting for something. Mrs. Dawson herded us into the corner, her hands shaking as she pushed a bookshelf in front of the door. That's when we heard it. The metallic screech of the staff entrance door being forced open. Then running. Not the orderly drill practice kind, stampeding. And the intercom, for the 3rd time, with a sound I'll never unhear, a wet, guttural gasp before it cut out. The hallway outside erupted into chaos. Lockers rattling, someone screaming he's inside. But our teacher just stood there, frozen, like her body hadn't processed the danger yet. I remember the exact moment reality snapped into focus. A thud against the classroom door, so heavy the bookshelf jerked forward. Every kid in that room stopped breathing. Tyler's face went sheet white, and the girl next to me, Maya, dug her nails into my arm hard enough to leave crescents. Then silence, the kind that makes your ears ring. I could smell my own sweat, sour and sharp, mixing with the acrid tang of dry erase markers. Maybe he moved on, I thought, until the doorknob twitched. Not a turn, not a rattle, just a flicker of movement like someone testing it. The mask had to be inches away, just on the other side of that thin slab of wood dot misses. Dawson finally lunged for her desk, fumbling with her keys to lock the door from the inside, but it was too late. A shadow slid past the window. Not the masked man, but someone else. A janitor? A teacher? All I saw was a hand, palm pressed to the glass, fingers splayed like they were trying to push through it. Then a voice, ragged and too loud. He's got the rest was cut off by a crash from down the hall, something metal hitting the floor. The hand disappeared. My stomach dropped. That's when the fire alarm went off. The sound ear-splitting, relentless. The sprinklers kicked on, drenching us in icy water. No smoke, no fire. Just that alarm shrieking like a warning as the lights flickered. And through the downpour, I swear I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. The lights flickered one last time before dying completely, plunging us into a darkness that felt alive. The only illumination came from the emergency exit signs, casting a sickly red glow over our terrified faces. Water from the sprinklers dripped down the walls, the sound echoing like a ticking clock. Somewhere down the hall, a locker door squeaked open on its own, followed by the unmistakable clang of something heavy hitting the floor. Maya's breath hitched beside me, and I realized we were too loud. Every whimper, every shaky exhale felt like a beacon. Then a new sound, a drag like something being pulled slowly across the linoleum. My mind raced. A body? A weapon? Mrs. Dawson mouthed, "Stay quiet," but her hand was shaking so badly her keys jingled. That's when the dragging stopped. Right outside our door, a fist pounded on the door, 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Not the frantic banging from before. This was controlled, mocking almost. My blood turned to ice. Next to me, Tyler squeezed his eyes shut like he could will himself somewhere else. Then a voice. Not the janitor's, not a teacher's. It was low, muffled by the mask, but the words came through clear. "I know you're in there." The doorknob rattled again, harder this time. The bookshelf trembled. Someone in the back of the room let out a choked sob. The voice continued, almost conversational. "You should have run when you had the chance." Then silence. No footsteps walking away. Just the feeling of being watched through that narrow window. The sprinklers kept raining down, mixing with the tears on my face. I knew, with a certainty that made my bones ache, he wasn't leaving. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until a sharp crack split the air, the sound of wood splintering. The bookshelf shuddered as something heavy slammed into the door again. Maya's grip on my arm tightened, her nails breaking skin, but I barely felt it. Adrenaline roared in my ears, drowning out everything except the relentless pounding. Then, a sliver of light appeared as the door inched open, the bookshelf screeching against the floor. A gloved hand curled around the edge, fingers flexing like a spider testing its web. Mrs. Dawson lunged forward, throwing her weight against the shelf, but it was too late. The gap widened, and the mask appeared, not just black now, but streaked with water from the sprinklers, the fabric clinging to the shape of a face underneath. The eye holes were empty, endless. I don't remember deciding to move. 1 second, I was frozen. The next, I was yanking Maya toward the emergency exit at the back of the classroom. The room erupted into chaos. Chairs clattering, someone screaming, "Go, go," as the door burst open behind us. I didn't look back. The hallway was a nightmare of flickering red lights and swirling water, the fire alarm still wailing. My sneakers slipped on the wet floor as we rounded a corner, nearly colliding with a group of freshmen huddled under a stairwell. Their wide eyes locked onto mine, and one of them mouthed, "He's behind you." My blood turned to ice. I didn't need to turn around to know. The footsteps were already there, unhurried, steady. Like he knew we couldn't outrun him, we crashed into the cafeteria, the double doors swinging wildly behind us. The room was deserted, trays of half-eaten food still on the tables. Milk cartons spilled across the floor. The only light came from the kitchen, where the industrial fridge hummed like a living thing. Maya wheezed beside me, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "We have to hide," she whispered, "but where? The kitchen? The walk-in freezer?" Before I could answer, a metallic clang echoed from the hallway, the crowbar dragging against the lockers. My hands fumbled for my phone, but it was dead, the screen black and useless. Then, a new sound, the creak of the cafeteria doors opening. Slow, purposeful. The mask appeared first, then the rest of him, tall, shoulders uneven, like he was favoring one side. He tilted his head, as if amused by our panic. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the nearest thing, a metal tray, and hurled it at the emergency exit bar across the room. The clatter was deafening, and for a split second, his head whipped toward the noise. That was all we needed. Maya and I bolted for the kitchen, skidding past stainless steel counters and racks of clean dishes. The walk-in freezer loomed ahead, its heavy door slightly ajar. We dove inside, yanking it shut behind us just as footsteps entered the kitchen. The cold was instant, biting into my skin, but I barely registered it. My entire world narrowed to the sound of his boots on the tile. Closer, closer, then silence. Had he left? Or was he right outside, waiting? My breath fogged in the air as the freezer's motor kicked on, drowning out everything except the hammering of my heart. We stayed there for what felt like hours, shivering in the dark, too terrified to speak. The cold seeped into my bones, turning my fingers numb, but I couldn't bring myself to move. At some point, the fire alarm stopped, leaving an eerie quiet in its wake. Then, distant shouts, real voices, not the masked man's. Police radios crackling. Maya and I exchanged a glance. Was it over? I pressed my ear to the door, listening hard. Footsteps again, but these were different. Faster, organized. Clear, someone yelled. I nearly sobbed in relief. With the last of my strength, I banged on the door, my voice raw from the cold and fear. "In here. Help us." The door swung open, blinding us with fluorescent light. An officer stood there, his face grim. "You're safe now," he said. But the way his eyes darted behind us, into the freezer, made me wonder. They never found him. The cops searched the school for hours, but the masked man was gone, like he'd never been there at all. The blue sedan in the parking lot, stolen, wiped clean of prints. The crowbar, left behind in the hallway, smeared with something dark that wasn't blood. The official report called it a hoax, but I know what I saw, what I heard. Sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I still hear those 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate, and a voice whispering the same words. "You should have run when you had the chance." Maya transferred schools. I stayed, but I never walked past the staff parking lot alone. And I always check the locks twice. I'm Danny, and back in 2019, I was a junior at Ridgewood High when everything went sideways. It was one of those sluggish October afternoons, air thick with cafeteria smells and the sound of pencils tapping. I had chemistry right before last period, but our teacher, Mr. Hargrove, was out with the flu. No one thought twice about it until he walked in. The sub didn't even look up as he moved to the whiteboard, shoulders hunched like he was carrying something invisible. Then he scrawled "No dismissals" in letters so deep the marker squeaked. My friend Eli shot me a look. What the hell does that mean? At first, we figured it was just some weird power trip. Subs loved flexing authority. But then the bell rang, and he bolted to the door, twisting the lock with this jerky, frantic motion. "Sit down," he said, voice too calm for how fast he was breathing. Behind him, the window showed kids flooding into the hallway, backpacks bouncing. Normal life right there, just not for us. My phone buzzed, a text from my mom. "You okay? Office says there's a lockdown." I shot down my spine. Lockdown? No alarm had gone off. No principal's voice on the speakers. Just this guy, staring at us like we were equations he needed to solve. The sub, whoever he was, started pacing the front of the room, his shoes making this weird, sticky sound against the linoleum. Every few steps, he'd glance at the door like he expected someone to burst through. I tried to catch Mia's eye across the lab table. Her fingers were clenched around her pencil, so tight her knuckles were white. Then the guy did something that made my stomach drop. He reached into his bag and pulled out a teacher's edition textbook, the kind with all the answers in red. Except, the cover was all wrong. It wasn't for chemistry. It was for AP European history, and the name on the spine wasn't his. It said L. Carter in peeling gold letters. A muffled voice crackled over the PA system. "Teachers, confirm your status," but the sub didn't move. just kept flipping through that book like he was looking for something. Then the intercom cut off mid-sentence, and the classroom lights flickered. Next to me, Eli sucked in a sharp breath. Outside, a distant thud echoed, maybe a door slamming, and then silence. The sub finally looked up, his eyes darting to the ceiling tiles like he was tracking something we couldn't see. "They're checking the rooms," he muttered, more to himself than to us. That's when I noticed his ID badge. The photo was him, but the name underneath? Definitely not L. Carter. The air in the room felt thicker suddenly, like we were all holding our breath without realizing it. I could hear the faint click of keyboards from the computer lab next door. Normal sounds that made our situation feel even more surreal. Then the sub snapped the textbook shut so hard the sound made half the class jump. His hands were shaking again, but his voice was eerily steady when he said, "No one leaves until I say so." Mia's phone buzzed against the desk, and his head whipped toward the sound. For a second, I thought he was going to lunge at her. Instead, he just smiled this tight, humorless grin and said, "You should put that away. They can track those, you know." A police siren wailed somewhere outside, distant but getting closer. The sub's head tilted, listening, and his fingers drummed against the textbook in a rhythm that didn't match the sirens at all. My phone screen lit up with a notification, a news alert about an incident at our school. No details, just that word, incident, in bold letters. The sub's eyes locked onto mine like he knew what I'd just seen. "Danny," he said, and hearing him say my name like we were old friends made my skin crawl. "You ever wonder how easy it is to walk into a place like this? Just become part of it." The door handle jiggled suddenly, and his whole body went rigid. Someone was trying to get in. The jiggling door handle stopped, and for a second, there was just silence. Then a voice, deep, official, called out, "This is Officer Vasquez. Open the door." The sub didn't move. His fingers curled around the edge of the teacher's desk, knuckles white. Mia's breath hitched beside me, and I realized I was gripping the underside of my chair like I could somehow anchor myself to reality. The officer knocked harder. "We need to confirm everyone's safety in there." The sub's lips moved silently, like he was rehearsing something. Then, in a voice too loud, too cheerful, he called back, "All good in here. Just finishing up a quiz." My blood ran cold. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. How many times had he done this before? A shadow moved across the door's narrow window, someone peering in. The sub immediately stepped into view, blocking the officer's line of sight. His arms spread like he was hurting us. "See? Everything's fine," he said, still smiling. But behind his back, his other hand was in his jacket pocket. I caught the faintest glint of metal. A key? A knife? My pulse roared in my ears. Eli subtly nudged his chair back, ready to bolt, but the sub's head snapped toward him. "Seat. Down." The officer's radio crackled outside, muffled but urgent. Then, clear as day, "Suspect not accounted for. Proceed with caution." The sub smile didn't waver, but his eyes, wide, unblinking, looked like they belonged to someone else entirely. The overhead lights flickered again, and this time they stayed off. Emergency lighting bathed the room in an eerie glow, turning everyone's faces ghostly pale. The sub's breathing was audible now, short, ragged bursts like he'd been running. He kept glancing at the clock, muttering numbers under his breath. 3 minutes. Just 3 more. Mia mouthed, "What?" at me, but I had no answers. Outside, footsteps pounded down the hall, voices shouting codes I didn't understand. The sub suddenly yanked something from his pocket. Not a weapon, but a lanyard with a key card. It looked official, but the logo was all wrong. It wasn't school-issued. It was from somewhere called Greenwood Behavioral. A loud thunk shook the door, someone ramming it. The sub flinched but didn't turn around. Instead, he walked to the lab sink and turned the faucet on full blast, water roaring like a waterfall. "Listen carefully," he said, voice barely audible over the noise. "When they come in, don't look at them. Don't say my name." My throat tightened. Why would we say his name? He wasn't even who he claimed to be. The door shuddered again, and this time, the frame splintered. The sub's shoulders slumped, almost relieved. As the police burst in, he dropped the lanyard into the sink, where it vanished down the drain. His last words to us were a whisper, "They'll tell you I was never here." Chaos erupted. Officers shouting, kids scrambling under desks, the sub getting tackled to the ground. But the weirdest part? He didn't resist. Just kept repeating, "Check the records. Check the records," like it was some kind of mantra. They cuffed him and dragged him out, but not before I saw his face go completely blank, like a switch had been flipped. The police wouldn't answer our questions, just herded us into the gym for parent pickup. Outside, news vans crowded the parking lot, cameras trained on school. But by the next morning, there was nothing online, no reports, no arrests. Just a vague email from the district about a lockdown drill. I never found out who that guy was. The office claimed no substitute had been assigned to our class that day. Mia swore she saw the name Greenwood Behavioral on a news segment about a missing patient weeks later, but the link she sent me was dead by the time I clicked it. Sometimes, I wonder if he was ever really there. But then I remember the way the water swallowed that lanyard, how his hand shook when he lied to the cop. And I think about what he said, "They'll tell you I was never here." And I realize that's exactly what happened.